On this week's episode, we're in Marion, Ohio, exploring the home, library, and tomb of the 29th President, Warren G. Harding. Harding's presidency was short-lived, having died while in office. Still, his story, presidency, and accomplishments remain interesting and intriguing. And for his tomb, it's one of the most breathtaking memorials we've ever been to. So come along with us as we explore on History and Relics. Warren G. Harding, born November 2, 1865, in Blooming Grove, Ohio, was the eldest of 8 children. Harding grew up in nearby Caledonia and later worked as an apprentice at the Caledonia Argus newspaper, an experience that would influence him for the rest of his life. His family later moved to Marion, Ohio, while Warren attended Ohio Central College in Iberia. He graduated in 1882 and shortly after partnered with 2 associates to purchase the Marion Daily Star. The newspaper struggled. His friends later left, but Warren held on, promoting new businesses and supporting the town's growth. Soon, the paper was making money. Harding owned the Star for nearly 40 years. Warren married Florence Kling DeWolf on July 8, 1891. She was the daughter of the richest man in Marion, Amos H. Kling. While Florence had 1 child, a son named Marshall, from a previous marriage, she and Warren had no children during their 32 years of marriage. However, Warren did have an affair with a Nan Britton sometime in early 1919 that later produced a daughter, Elizabeth Ann Bleesing, born October 22, 1919. Nan first made her claim about the affair in a 1927 book entitled The President's Daughter, although there was no evidence to support the claim at the time. Mother and daughter died in 1991 and 2005 respectively, never having the necessary proof. However, in 2015, the 2 families came together seeking resolution, and through the help of DNA and Ancestry.com, they received confirmation that Elizabeth was indeed the President's daughter. Harding entered into politics in 1899, winning a seat in the Ohio legislature as a state senator, where he served 2 terms. Following that, he became a lieutenant governor in 1903 and served until 1905. After an unsuccessful bid for Ohio governor, he later launched a successful run for a seat in the U.S. Senate in 1915. Becoming Ohio's first senator elected by direct vote of the citizens. While residing on Wyoming Avenue in Washington, D.C., Senator and Mrs. Harding hired help, a cook by the name of Inez McWhorter. She would also travel back to Marion to work for the Hardings, along with other hired help the Hardings had. Inez was from Georgia and was a first-generation freed African American. She had a great work pedigree, having worked for the likes of Monty Blair, who was Postmaster General in Abraham Lincoln's cabinet, as well as Ulysses S. Grant's son, Ulysses S. Grant, Jr. Inez was well known for her special waffles and creamed chipped beef gravy, Warren's favorite. Nearly everyone who visited the Hardings knew of or experienced this dish for themselves. And it wasn't uncommon for Warren to eat as many as 20 to 30 waffles in one setting. Inez would work for the Hardings for several years before returning to Georgia. She would later pass away on August 7, 1932, with an estate valued at more than $33,000. That's over $650,000 in today's money. After World War I, the country was not quite enjoying what would later be referred to as the Roaring Twenties, as many of the treaties to end the war had not yet been settled. Veterans were having trouble finding work, and farmers were having financial troubles. As the country was looking for change, Harding's supporters were urging him to run for president, and run he did. By June 1920, Harding won the Republican nomination. Massachusetts Governor Calvin Coolidge was selected as the Republican vice president candidate. His opponent was Ohio's governor at the time and owner of the Dayton Daily News, Democrat James Cox. His VP was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. After the nomination, Harding returned to Marion, where he decided to conduct nearly all of his campaigning for the next few months from the front porch of his home on Mount Vernon Avenue. His campaign was the fourth such front porch style campaign, with all three previous campaigns having been successfully conducted by Ohio presidents, Benjamin Harrison, James Garfield, and William McKinley. Over the course of Harding's campaign, about 600,000 people would come to Marion to hear him speak, and we got a chance to stand on the very porch where President Harding gave those campaign speeches. So let us take you there now and show you around the grounds. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, allowing women for the first time the right to vote. This definitely had an impact on Harding's bid for the White House. On Election Day, November 2nd, Harding took the White House with more than 60% of the votes in 37 of the 48 states, the biggest landslide in U.S. history at the time. Once more, on March 2, 1921, Mr. and Mrs. Harding stood on their front porch of their Marion home to say goodbye to their fellow neighbors and supporters before leaving for Washington, D.C. The 29th President was sworn in on the steps of the U.S. Capitol on March 4th. His inauguration speech was the first to be given with the aid of an amplification system in order for the thousands of attendees to hear his speech. The Hardings were very popular among Americans. Some estimates showed President Harding as being the most popular president since Abraham Lincoln. They enjoyed chatting and mingling with the average American citizens. They even opened the White House to visitors, and Mrs. Harding conducted some of the tours herself. As for the Harding presidency, some of the accomplishments include signing the Treaty of Berlin to formally end hostilities with Germany after World War I. He reduced the federal deficit by 25% in just 2 years, and dedicated the tomb of the unknown soldier in Washington, D.C. In the summer of 1923, the President and Mrs. Harding set out for a trip through the western states, north through Canada and into Alaska, which was not yet a state, to meet with various people and learn of Alaska's resources. The trip was arduous and took a toll on the President's health. Harding fell ill at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco and remained there for several weeks trying to recover. Just when attending physicians thought that the worst of the President's conditions had passed, the President died unexpectedly on August 2, 1923, from what was assumed to be a stroke of apoplexy. However, modern-day medicine suggests that the President died from a massive heart attack. The President's body was taken by train back to Washington, D.C., and later, thousands of mourners filed past the President's body as he lay in state in the rotunda of the Capitol building. From there, the President's body was transported by train to Marion, to his father's home for public viewing by neighbors and close friends, such as Harvey Firestone, Henry Ford, and Thomas Edison, while others, such as baseball superstar Babe Ruth, wrote a letter to Mrs. Harding expressing his and Mrs. Ruth's condolences. We're going to break away for a few moments now to show you some of the highlights from inside the Presidential Library and Museum. After the president died, all of his papers, including personal and government-related documents, were housed in the 7-foot-long wooden crates and placed in the basement of the White House until arrangements could be made to ship them back to Marion. By law, at the time, these papers were the property of Mrs. Harding. It wouldn't be until sometime in 1978, when papers of the president and vice president were not to be considered property of him or her, but rather belonging to the people of the United States. Mrs. Harding was soon approached by the Library of Congress, who asked that she donate all of the president's papers. In the winter of 1923-1924, Mrs. Harding went through several boxes of her husband's papers at his office at the Star. She later directed a good many of the documents to be burned. It's not known how many papers were disposed of, but it's thought that many contained correspondence among family members, friends, and Star employees. What is known for sure today, and contrary to reports at the time, is that not all of the presidential papers were destroyed. There remains over 350,000 of them. Currently, many of them are in the process of being digitized and will make their way back to Marion and the Presidential Library and Museum when completed. The president's remains were laid to rest in a small receiving vault at the Marion Cemetery. He would be joined by the First Lady, who died on November 21, 1924. Meanwhile, plans to construct a grand tomb were underway just a short distance away from the receiving vault. Construction began sometime in 1926, and in December 1927, the bodies of the President and Mrs. Harding were interred in the Harding Memorial, where they remain today. President Herbert Hoover, who was once one of Harding's cabinet members in the role of Secretary of Commerce, officially dedicated the memorial in 1931. Let's now take you to the President and First Lady's beautiful grand tomb to pay our respects. The memorial was owned and managed by the Harding Memorial Association from 1926 through 1979. In 1979, the memorial's ownership, along with the Harding home, was transferred to the state of Ohio. The Harding Memorial, Harding Home, and Warren G. Harding Presidential Library and Museum are today managed by the Ohio History Connection. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our program. If you like our content, we ask that you give us a thumbs up, a like, share with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you always know when our new content is published. And all of this costs nothing, but means a lot to us and keeps us growing. You may also leave us a tip if you choose. The address is provided here on your screen, and a link is provided in the description area below. So until next time, everyone, this one is history.